This time we have another question that if just give me a moment. I should. Okay, so I have conducted a study, and most of the time I try to publish it in good journal. When I say good journal, meaning a journal published by standardized publishers like Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Routledge, Science Direct, Springer Nature, Sage, whose rejection rate is quite high. So I don't get my article accepted. The major reason is the selection of the tools, the choice of the hello. Yeah, the major reason, the major problem is the choice of the tools. Among there are many other problems as well. So this is one of the reasons. So which tool? Hello. So how should we select a good tool for research that can lead to good publication, good results, reliable results? Because this is the measuring instrument. And if you have a reliable measuring instrument, only then can your results be reliable. So how should we select a standardized tool which will be acceptable to the research community? Or, or if or if at all I construct a tool, then how can we ensure that the tool constructed by me is a good tool, can become a standardized tool? So these are the two major questions that we would like to answer once we know that there are several tools in quantitative research. So from after today's session, we'll be able to answer these two questions. So this is the example of one of the standardized research tool, consciousness quotient inventory. When you look at the this article of consciousness quotient inventory, wherein the tool is published. When I say the tool is published, so in India, we usually publish it with some publisher. So in other than India, in other countries, they publish the article on the development and standardization of the tool. And then they mention the entire process that they have adopted, followed to standardize the tool. And if it is published by a good publisher, then there is tendency that this tool would be used in comparison to other tools which are not published in good journals, right? So this tool is published in Frontiers in Psychology, which is one of the popular and very high impact factor journal. So when we see the results section of the tool, it says that split half reliability was tested using Cronbach's alpha, part 1, 119 items, part 2, 118 items. Correlation between forms R is equal to 0.940. And for the entire questionnaire with 237 items, reliability analysis revealed a very good internal consistency, Cronbach's alpha, 0.989. Now, when we read this content, does it make sense to any one of you? What the author is trying to say about the tool here? Anybody? The term split half reliability or the value 0.940 or the term very good internal consistency. Does it make sense to you? Are you able to process these terms?
Ma'am, split half means when.
Yes.
Ma'am, can I speak?
Yes, please, Harendra. Yes.
Ma'am, split half means when the test is divided into two halves, and then after collecting the data, the two half correlation has been done and found there is a significant relation between the items in the first half and the item in the second half.
Why do I do that? Why do we find out split half reliability? No idea. No problem. So what do you mean when you say it has very good internal consistency?
Madam, this is for finding the consistency in the responses.
Okay, yes. And why do we look for consistency in responses?
When someone is not just giving the responses in fake, but the way...
No, for that we use the lie scale that we discussed last time. Okay, no problem. Just I'm trying to understand whether are you familiar with these terms or not?
Ma'am, split half is used when the test is not been able to re-administrate as the test reliability is going to be done. So we can
why
divide
test retest reliability? Why split half reliability? Why do we talk about it? Why is it required?
to find out that
Yes, Jayanya?
This split half reliability, I think it is for to see if the test is testing what it should be testing. So the questions, are they consistent with the purpose of the research or not? So yeah, that.
It's okay. That was a good guess. No problem. But I'll tell you what. So whenever we look at the tools which are published, the tools would mention this, and on the basis of the terms like this, we decide whether we should use this tool or not. Number one. Number two, where the tool is published. For example, this tool is published in Frontiers in Psychology, which is a reputed journal. Now let's see another tool. Freiberg's Mindfulness Inventory, popularly known as FMI. It says the results section of this tool, the article which is published, which says the development and standardization of the tool. It says test results from 115 subjects over 2 sessions show Cronbach alphas are very high, 0.93, 0.94, indicating internally consistent measure of mindfulness. Now, what do you mean by this? If none, it's okay. So today we'll try to understand what these terms mean. Actually, these are the terms that help you select the right tool, the correct tool. Number one, the terms, as I said. Number two, where the article is published, the article related to the standardized tool. So how do we select the standardized tool? By looking at these values. We'll discuss in detail what these terms mean and why are these terms important in terms of selection of a standardized tool. Number one. Number two, we have to see that the tool is published, the development of the tool is published in some good journal, reputed journal. Third criteria can be the article, the researchers who have used these tools and published the articles are published in reputed journals. So these are the three criteria using which you should select a tool, a standardized tool. When we do not have orientation about this, what we do is we just refer to the locally available tools, and we either just use those tools and try to publish the articles. So there are very high chances of rejection from good reputed journals. Okay. So another is, if the tool is not available, I would like to construct the tool. Then in the construction process also, we make some errors, especially we do not report these things. So what is it that we should report and where we should publish so that the tool constructed by us is also acceptable to the research community? Especially I'm talking A-graded journals, not the B-graded and the C-graded journals who are actually the fake and the predatory journals who will ask 5,000, 10,000 from you and would publish your article in no time. So we are not talking about these journals. We are talking about reputed journals. I have already shared at the onset the name of some of the publishers who are reputed. Okay, now this is another example. It says that correlation with other relevant constructs was significant, lends construct validity to the scale. So we'll try to understand what does this term mean. This is another technical term. So Turkish version of the metacognitive awareness inventory. For concurrent validity, the relationship between metacognitive awareness inventory and MAI which was translated into Turkish in this study, was calculated. The result also showed that there was a high relationship between two inventories, R is equal to 0.95. So we'll try to understand all the terms, which terms we have to look for in the standardized tools, or which terms we have to use when we construct a tool, and what points we have to keep in mind. Okay, so let's first of all see which are the two important characteristics of research tools. As one of you said, validity. Let's first understand what is validity. So the two important terms are validity and reliability, and both the terms are different. We'll try to understand what is validity. Validity is the degree to which the tool measures what it is intended to measure. So very simple example. If I am wearing a wristwatch and my watch shows the time, the correct time, then it is a valid wristwatch. So it refers to the degree to which the tool measures what it is intended to measure. So if I have prepared an anxiety scale, so if the scale assesses the anxiety, then it is anxiety scale. If it is not able to assess the anxiety, then it is not valid. So this is simply the validity. So this is another example. crude example, weight scale measures body weight. It is valid because that is the objective of the weight scale. That is the purpose for which it is made. And the next important point is a tool which is valid for one measure need not be valid for another measure. So when I'm trying to assess anxiety through anxiety scale, it may not work when I want to assess attention using that anxiety scale. So validity for one construct does not mean that it is valid for all constructs. It is in context to the construct that we are trying to assess. Okay, so that's validity. Now, so we said that we have to ensure that the tool is valid. So how will you determine that the tool measures what it ought to measure? Any answers? How would you determine? Some of you must have constructed tool or must have used your tool in your PG projects, some or the other research tool. How do you ensure that the tool selected by you or constructed by you measures what it ought to measure?
Ma'am, we validate by the experts of that particular discipline.
Yes, very good. The first and important criteria is validity by the experts in that area. Yes. So validity of a research tool. So that is just one validity. Let's see what are different other types of validity. So basically there are two categories of validity. One is translational validity, that is theoretical assessment of the construct. It should cover all the components of the construct. And there are two types of translational or representational validity. Number one is face validity and another is content validity. Then next is criterion validity, empirical assessment. How far does the construct relate to another construct, another similar construct, right? And how far can it discriminate to the opposing construct? Okay, just I hope this bar is not distracting you. Okay, yeah. Oh, yes. And then another is predictive validity. Does the tool that measures anxiety is able to predict the related variable? That is predictive validity. We'll see in detail about each of these types of validity. So let's see the first one, translational or representational validity. So theoretical assessment of validity of how well the idea of a theoretical construct is translated into or represented in an operational measure. The tool that we have prepared covers comprehensively the theoretical construct. This assessment is called theoretical assessment of validity or translational or representational validity. Now, so first of all, we begin when we prepare a tool. Does the test look like a measure of the construct of interest? That means we are not going in the in-depth analysis. First of all, as a researcher, you would go through your tool. Does it look like a measure of the construct of interest? Does it have just two items? It doesn't look like the measure of the, suppose I want to assess academic achievement, depression, anxiety, anything. And I just have 2 to 3 items. So does it look like? No, it doesn't look like. The language is vague. So I decide. So that's called face validity. On the face. So it is a highly informal way to measure the validity, but this is what we begin with. So on the face, is it valid? So it is literally on its face, and it may not require statistical methods, and depends on the casual observations and first impressions only. And then we move ahead, and we can check other types of validity. Now, the next question is, does the test contain items from the desired content domain? So when we assess any construct, it is a kind of domain. It is set of attributes that we are trying to assess. So does my test cover the entire content domain? For example, how will you achieve this objective? You evaluate how well a group of students knows words and Yeah, someone's mic is on, please put it off. Someone is talking. Kritika, or who is there? Kritika Dubey, can you please mute your mic and continue your conversation? Kritika Dubey? Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I have done that. She's not
Okay.
having.
No problem. Thank you. No problem. Thank you.
Please mute her.
Yeah. Okay. So, students, how would you achieve this objective to evaluate how well a group of students could spell 1,000 words in French? So, would you take a test of on all these students, administer the test with 1,000 words? Suppose you have a group of, say, 100, 150 students, 200 students, and you want to assess, you have taught them 1,000 words in French. So, would you have in your test all 1,000 words? Because we are saying content validity means it should be comprehensive. It should cover the content comprehensively. How would you ensure?
Both extremes we'll have to take, like the simplest and the difficult.
One rule is, yes, as you said, now simplest in terms of what? In terms of maybe the number of letters it has, or maybe the combination of use of vowels. So difficulty level, or when you're saying simple to complex. Okay, so that's the one rule. And what else? But how many words would you give in the test to test this objective?
Ma'am, we would have more than 1,000 words so that like it is comprehensive. So it gives options for more number of students to, like pick and choose, or, able to understand those words or write.
Okay,
So
so
more
every
than
year you are
1,000
teaching,
words.
every year you are teaching, or every semester you are teaching 150 students French. And it takes you in the entire semester to teach them these 1,000 words. So how would you assess? If you will prepare a test which has 1,000 words, how many days would it take with 150 students? And you have to repeat this every semester. You have new students enrolled in your course. That will be a very
Ma'am, the
tedious.
period of testing also can be changed.
Okay. But you have to assess on those 1,000 words. How would you do that? And how would you ensure that it is comprehensive? Okay, let me give you one example. You have to you have to make a judgment about a population. Do you administer the test on the entire population?
Ma'am, we will take some questions which will represent the whole 1,000 words.
Yes, very good, Ujala. That's the correct answer. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to identify some words which represent the entire 1,000. This is what Cohen has. Cohen is I think you must be familiar with Cohen. He's a famous researcher, and he has written many articles and books on chapters on research methods. So he says that you select 50 words for a spelling test, for example. Okay. And what we have to ensure that these 50 words represent the range of spellings that were there in the 1,000 words. So you should cover all the spelling rules, okay, all the combination of vowels and starting with this word and letter or something, whatever, syllables and everything you want to test. So all spelling rules should be covered. This you would ensure. But for sure, you cannot prepare a test with all 1,000 words. It becomes difficult, right? And if you're similarly covering, 10 chapters, 12 chapters in mathematics, and you have many topics, so you'll not be asking all these questions in the test at the end of the semester. You'll have to select some, right? So representation is the important part. So this is what is the content validity. What we do is we select the items that represent a reasonable sampling of all possible items or behaviors that make the domain being measured. So there is a big set. That is, it has many attributes. That construct can be assessed through many attributes or traits or skills. Then we'll select the subset. Now, the trick is selection of the subset should be such that it represents the entire set. So if we are able to do this, then our tool has content validity. So this is what is meant when we say content validity. So now the prerequisite to do this is you can assess a construct comprehensively only if you yourself, first of all, know what are the major aspects or subcategories of the content area. So when you say we are assessing spirituality, when you say we are assessing anxiety, intelligence, see, all of these are not very objective terms, right? Even when we see that Wechsler's definition of intelligence versus Stoddard's definition of intelligence, there is difference. Okay, so you have to operationally define the construct, and first of all, you have to read a lot about that construct. This is the major problem with most of the researchers. They are not clear about the variable of their study. So you have to be very, very clear about the variables. You should know each and every aspect of that variable, or we can say subcategories of that variable, and then select the representational attributes or skills or traits that represent that construct. So that would ensure your content validity. And for this, what we do is, first of all, we try to develop such a tool which comprehensively covers the content. Then we seek the expert's opinion, as you said. So what experts do is, number one, they check the adequacy of the representation of the content universe or the domain in correct proportions. Then they also check for the errors or ambiguities in items. Other than redundancy and all, we will see later, but this is what is the focus when we talk about the content value. And the basis for rejection or inclusion of the items can be percentage of agreement between the judges. So you seek the expert's opinion, you select the experts. Now, how do you select the experts? So if you are preparing some tool in Hindi or English language, for that matter, any language, so you have to select language expert who can check the language. Then content expert who has the mastery over that content, who can ensure all the subcategories of that construct are covered. And if we have more than such experts, we can find out more than 1, 2, 3, 4. So more the number of experts, you'll get the objective opinion from number of experts, and then you can find out the percentage of agreement among the judges to identify if you have left some category, or if all the categories are represented, and if they are represented, then they are represented in the correct proportions. So this is how you ensure the content validity. Now, there are statistics available to find out content validity. We have content validity index and CVI, it's called, and there are many more terms. So that's statistics. That is how you can find out content validity. Now, next question is, so once we have ensured as a researcher, to begin with, I check the tool for the face validity on face, it is okay or not. Then I check the content, whether I have comprehensively covered the construct or not, with the help of my supervisor and with the help of experts. Then I want to see that, does the test show the right pattern of interrelationships with other variables? So what do you mean by this when we say that right pattern of interrelationship with other variables? So I have to ask pop-up questions just to ensure that you are connected or not. We have 276 participants. So Neha, would you like to answer? Astha, would you like to answer? Felix, would you like to answer?
I think it looks into an issue of relativity between the variables. How close are they to each other?
Okay, then in context of text test, the construct that I'm trying to assess, what does variable mean? Variables mean, because we have one variable, that is the one construct then we are talking about. So for example, I'm assessing anxiety. Then why I'm using the term variables? Why interrelationship?
To measure anxiety, we have a different variables. So you are using more than one.
For example?
Stress level or responsiveness to any actions,
very good.
unexpected things, body language, facial expressions.
Right. So after anxiety, which one did you say the first? Jayashree?
Hello.
Yes.
Stress level.
Stress, yes. Let's take an example of stress. What Jayashree said. Let's then we'll listen to second one also. Someone else is also saying. So anxiety and stress, right?
Also,
we know that.
Can I say something?
Yes, Farhad. Just let me just finish with Jayashree's answer. Then we'll take up your answer. So what we are saying is, as Jayashree said, anxiety, and we try to see its relationship with stress. if our tool we claim is assessing anxiety, then if there is some other tool which is available to assess stress, then the scores obtained by anxiety tool that I have developed and the scores obtained by the stress tool that is already existing should be correlated, because anxiety and stress are the variables which are correlated. That is the one example. Yes, Farhad, you want to say something?
Yeah, ma'am, there could be one construct, and for that there could be many variables which can be studied. So a bunch of variables can be used to study a single construct. So we should also take care about interdependence or interrelationship of those variables.
To some extent, it is correct. I'll correct you. See, it is, we try to study interrelationship of the construct that we are trying to assess with another related variable. So as Jeshri said, anxiety seems to be related with stress. So if the scores on anxiety of an individual correlate with the scores on stress test of that individual, that means our scale is able to assess anxiety. That is what is interrelationship with other variables. So by here variables, we mean related variables. Yes, Farhad had something to say.
Yeah, ma'am. I think it's on everybody. I think they explained it. But I want to say that when we are talking about the variables, so we are targeting the independency and dependency of the variables, ma'am. And about the interrelationships, also we are talking about the system, a system that everything should take, every step that we are taking, it should be according to a system. Then after that, we can understand that what's going on there exactly. Then we can make sure.
Yes, you're right. So when we say that the test shows the right pattern of interrelationship with other variable, we mean by criterion related validity. So criterion related validity is empirical assessment of validity of tool constructed by us or the selected tool, which examines how well a given measure relates to one or more external criteria based on empirical observations. So we'll find out correlation with one or more external criterion, not among the items of the test, but with another test, a related variable. That is criterion related variable validity. So for example, instrument measuring anxiety state is said to be valid. That is criterion validity is said to have criterion related validity if the anxiety scores correlate with some criterion, such as persons who are known to be anxious. Example, student prior to a difficult examination. We know that these students get anxious before examination, and we can realize this by their facial expressions, or the student says that I'm having anxiety. And when you administer this tool on that student, the scores are high. That means anxiety is high. That means your tool is able to measure the anxiety. Then it has criterion related validity. This is what is criterion related validity. Now, there are several types of criterion related validity. One is concurrent, which has one concurrent validity is basically, we assess the tool that we have constructed with a gold standard. That means there is some other standardized tool which is available, which measures the similar construct. For example, there is Freiberg's mindfulness inventory. Then there is another inventory which assesses mindfulness. So if the results of the scores of both the inventories are same, that is, I have developed an inventory which assesses mindfulness, then the scores on this tool and scores on FMI, that is Freiberg's mindfulness inventory, are correlated and have high correlation. That means it has concurrent validity. This is what is concurrent validity. Okay, now in this we try to assess two things. One is convergent validity, that is test correlates with other measures of similar constructs, or divergent validity, test isn't correlated with measures of other different constructs. For example, I want to assess mindfulness and I assess mind wandering. So the scores will be negatively correlated. So that's divergent validity. Because the one who is mindful will have less of mind wandering, right? So this is what is divergent validity. So if I have prepared a mindfulness test or scale on inventory, and the scores are same as FMI, Freiberg's mindfulness inventory, which is already a standardized tool available to assess mindfulness, then it has convergent validity. If the scores on the tool constructed by me on mindfulness are negatively correlated with mind wandering, which is an opposite construct, then it has divergent validity. So this is criterion related validity. Basically, we are assessing whether the construct as measured by us and as measured by other similar constructs is same or not. So for example, a new measure of depression should have strong correlation with other existing measures of depression, have negative correlation with measures of happiness. So this is another example, because depression and happiness are having contrast. So it should have negative correlation with happiness. The standardized tool, which is available there. Okay, so next question is, can standardized test scores, example, scholastic aptitude test scores, correctly predict the academic success in college as measured by college grade point average? What do we mean by this question? Anybody? Okay, we have Aditi, Astha, Aditi Sharma, Akhilesh, Janak, Ismalia, Indra. Anybody would like to answer? Those who have never participated in the interaction in my session. What do we mean by this? I want you at least to read the question loudly so that I know that you're connected. Janak, would you like to answer? Or just read the question maybe? Are you connected, Janak?
Hello, ma'am.
Okay. Ujala is always active. That's good. Let's try to find out who is not there in the. You'll get to know who is not there, who is connected but not there. Yes, Aditi, you are there. Very good, Aditi.
Ma'am, I can just read it out. I do not know the answer.
Very good. But reading shows that you're connected. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Can standardized test scores, example scholastic aptitude test scores, correctly predict the academic success in college, example as measured by college grade point average?
Fine. Anybody else who can interpret this question?
Ma'am, does that really mean that should the scores be only considered maybe on that day the person was not well or not prepared or something like that?
Okay, let's assume I have constructed a scholastic aptitude test and I say that it is a standardized test. Now to assess whether this test is valid or not, what I'll do is, another measure of assessing whether this is valid or not is if my test is able to predict the academic success in the college.
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please, Akshaya.
What I understand is that at a school level, there's this assessment happening to test whether a person is, competent enough to score equally well. If they've scored well in the scholastic aptitude test, they might go ahead, and at a college level, they would, be predisposed to more success and getting good grades. So they would get an equally high level of, marks in their college level grade point average. That's what the question is.
Yes, perfect, Akshaya. So does my test do that? Does my test have the predictive ability? So I have prepared this scholastic aptitude test. I call it standardized test. So does it have predictive ability? Can it predict the academic success in the college? Because I'm saying scholastic aptitude test. Yeah.
No, we can't predict this, ma'am.
If we cannot, then our test is not valid.
Yes, ma'am, exactly. Actually, I was reading this question. I was getting confused, but when she replied, then I get the point. This is not a predictive, actually.
Hello.
If it is not able to predict, then your tool, that is scholastic aptitude test, is said to have poor predictive validity. So it is said to have poor predictive validity. But if your tool is able to correctly predict the academic success in college,
we can do CTP or anything kind of
aptitude, you are assessing the scholastic aptitude. If you say your tool says it has the student X student has good scholastic aptitude, then that student should usually have good academic success. Forget about the extreme cases. In general, at least it should be able to predict.
Madam,
So
if
this, yes, please, Ujala.
it is a standardized test, then it must ensure the validity.
Hello.
So it must be used as it is a scholastic aptitude test. So they must be predict validity. Is combination.
Yes, it should be able to predict the related variable. If it is able to predict the related construct, then we can say that this variable has another criterion related variability validity, and that is called predictive validity. So
Even
degree
not
to, yes, so a degree to which a measure successfully predicts a future outcome that it is theoretically expected to predict is called predictive validity. Yes,
even
please.
yeah, I'm really sorry to
No
interrupt in
problem. No
between.
problem. Yes, please, Archana. Yes.
Yeah, ma'am, this side one thing is that after we can predict, like you have said, the scholarship of attitude test, we can do CGPA or SGPA. I mean, university level पे जो calculation था उसकी criteria पे we can predict over that the success of college. तो measurable valid predictive होना चाहिए. We can't take anything which is not a part of valid or invalid. ऐसा confusion नहीं होनी चाहिए. ऐसा जैसे आपने बोला ना criteria related validity कुछ उसके related होना चाहिए, which is
Absolutely,
measurable.
you are right. The variables should be related, which we are trying to predict. है ना? You are absolutely right. You have made a good point. अगर मैं scholastic aptitude test बनाया मैंने, and if I've constructed this kind of tool and I say it is a standardized tool, it should predict the related variable. For example, academic success is a related variable because scholastic aptitude theoretically says assesses the academic success, right? So it should be able to predict. But I do not talk about the unrelated variable. So unrelated variable can be, say depression. I don't know what is the correlation between, scholastic aptitude and the depression. So it may not have it may not predict that thing. So by predictive validity, we mean that it should successfully predict a future outcome that it is theoretically expected to predict. That is the construct which is really related. So that is why this predictive validity, it comes under the criterion validity. It says the criteria, it fulfills the criteria that it measures what it ought to measure, or it is ought to measure. So I hope you are clear with the validity part now. Any questions till validity?
Yes, ma'am, clear. Thank you so much. It was really informative.
Okay, so we talked about validity and two types of validity. One is theoretical validity, theoretical assessment of the validity, that is called translational validity. And then we talked about, in translational validity, we talked about face validity and the content validity. Face validity is a very crude measure. It is informal way of assessing the validity. Then we talked about content validity. Then in criterion validity, concurrent and convergent and divergent both. The similar construct and the construct which is actually opposite to that construct. And then we talked about the predictive validity. So these are different types of validity that we can find out and report after we have constructed the tool. And this is what your tool is supposed to do. Yes. This is one part of standardization of a tool. Yes, Ujala, please.
Ma'am, just to these points that we are discussing, they come in the process of standardization of a tool.
Yes. We'll talk about the process. First of all, when you select a standardized tool, what you have to look for? You have to look for the validity of the tool. So there can be different types of validity reported by the researcher. So face validity, if somebody reports, it is just highly informal. So that is not sufficient. So at least a content validity, or predictive validity or divergent convergent validity should be reported. And if it has good convergent validity, concurrent validity, then we can say that the tool is standardized. Or if you are constructing a tool and if you have calculated this validity and you report that it has good validity, good content validity or good validity, then your tool can be called a standardized tool. So there are statistical procedures as we talked about in this for each of these. Yes? Okay. So the next important measure, I'll talk about the steps of standardization of a tool. First of all, let's try to understand what are the two important points for. I've taken this up first because we may have to end the session in between. Okay, so next is important point is reliability. Refers to the consistency of a measuring tool, right? So it is consistent. So if I measure your anxiety today, and if no intervention is given to you, you are in the same state, then this state of anxiety, my tool should be able to assess after 1 month also. If there is no change, like theoretically, there is no change in the anxiety or the depression. If the treatment is given, that is a different story. So, but if there is consistency, then we call that the tool is reliable. Now, there are different types of reliability that we would look for. So, and this can be assessed statistically. So now, why do our observations become unreliable? So what are the sources of unreliable observations in social science measurements? What do we do with our tool that our tool becomes unreliable? Anybody, please? Possible errors because of which our tool may become unreliable. Okay, now let's see participants who are connected.
Ma'am, can I say something?
Who's that? Archana?
Yeah.
Archana? Yes, please.
Ma'am, suppose I can give an example of not a social science, but as a give an example like stress management.
Yes.
What kind of stress management, what kind of source I can use for the people who are working in IT sector as an employee. This is a part of my PhD research actually. So what kind of reliability or what kind of source I can take for the stress measures, not for the unnecessary cheese like depression, anxiety. These are all the part of stress management. But what kind of effect to the employee's productivity affecting on IT sector? So that kind of source we can take. I mean, just for the observation we can take. This is what I.
Yes, but maybe I did not frame my question correctly. My question is, what mistakes do you make while preparing a tool, while constructing a tool that can lead to the tool which is developed is not reliable? What kind of mistakes we make?
Sometimes bias and error become the part of it now.
We are not clear about the objective, then it will be invalid. Okay, and what else?
Can I answer?
Yes, please, Ujala.
Probably we do not conduct that test again and again on a particular audience, which needs to be done to increase the reliability of a test. So for example, if I am giving a test or questionnaire to a group of people, so I need to increase, to check its reliability, I need to do it again and again. For example, I need to give that audience the same test after 2 weeks, let's say.
Yes.
And the scores match again and again, which it indicates that the test is reliable. And if the scores do not match, then probably it indicates that there is reliability factor increase.
Even
Yes,
ma'am, personal opinion also make the difference.
Personal opinion in the sense?
In the sense like
own changes.
It's okay, Archana, no problem.
I mean,
Ujala, what you
making own changes in the tools actually for personal opinion, we can say.
Okay, so Ujala, what you said is related to how do we assess that reliability. So I'll tell you what mistakes we make because of which our tool becomes unreliable. So just give me a minute, I need hands. Okay, so one is, as you said, Archana, observer's subjectivity. So it can be at any point while defining the construct or while constructing the tool, then asking the imprecise or ambiguous questions. So your questions are not well framed. Then you will not get the right kind of response.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to ask a well framed question. Language has to be clear and precise. That is the major source of unreliability. You want to ask something else and you end up asking something else. A very simple example, I'll tell you what. This is the observation, the real observation that I'm sharing with you. So during internship, one of my peers wanted to introduce evaporation. So to introduce evaporation, she asked some questions. So she said, what will happen if I walk on the floor and which has the water on it? So she said that students would say that after some time water will evaporate and you can walk and things like that. The students said that you will fall down. And then everybody started laughing, ha ha. So the question was not framed properly. She wanted to ask about evaporation and she ended up asking something else. So framing up of the question is very, very important. That will make your tool unreliable otherwise, the items that you are talking about. Another source of unreliability is asking the question that respondents are not familiar with. You are talking to a student community who are never exposed or oriented to research. And in your tool, you have some question related to research. What a researcher should do, X, Y, Z, how can you get a degree of research or things like that. For sure, you would not get the right answer. So you have to remember who's your target audience, whom are you talking to. You ask a question which is of level of primary school and you ask a preschooler, he'll not be able to respond. So you have to ensure that the topic that you're talking about, the respondent has familiarity with it. Okay, so that can be another source of unreliability. Now, how can we ensure that our tool is reliable? Number one is inter-rater or inter-observer reliability.
Class चालू sir, ना करा attendance.
How sweet. Okay. It is very easy to get distracted in the online classroom. Okay, so inter-rater reliability. So it is a measure of consistency between two or more independent raters of the same construct. So if you have, you yourself are there, you have constructed a tool and there is another rater or observer who, makes the assessment using that tool, and both of you have done the same assessment, then your tool is reliable because both of you are able to interpret the question in the same manner. So that is called inter-observer reliability. And this can be done through a pilot study. And depending on the level of the measurement of the construct, it can be done in several ways, not only 2 ways, okay? And the statistics that we can use is Cohen's kappa. It is a popular statistics which is used to assess the inter-rater reliability. Then we have another is test-retest reliability. That is, as you said, that we can take test and then after some time we can take that test again and the responses are same. Then we are able to say that the measurement is consistent. So a measure of consistency between two measurements, that is two tests of the same construct, administered to the same sample at two different points in time. So what we have to keep in mind in this is that sample did not get any kind of intervention which may affect the variable. That we have to ensure. So if observations have not changed substantially between the two tests, then the measure is reliable. So the score may be 45 to 48, that much is fine. So if the test is of 100 marks, okay, so that much of deviation is fine. Then the correlation in observations between the two tests can give us the estimate of the test-retest reliability. So score of the test 1 and the same test taken at another time. So that score, both the scores, if they are correlated, higher the correlation, more the test-retest reliability it has. Now, time interval between the two tests is very critical. So if you test it after 1 year, 6 months, 4 months, so it can have maturation effect and it may change. So longer the time gap, the lower will be the retest reliability. Then next is split half reliability, which we had seen in case of CQI. So it is the measure of consistency between two halves of a construct measure. So I'll show you through example. So if your question has test has 100 items, then I'll make it into two halves. It can be done through random number generator. So 50 items randomly generated through a random number generator in first half, and rest of the 50 items in the second half, or you can say odd even. See in this example, it's odd even. So split the test into two halves and then administer that same test on the same set of individuals. So here I have shown you an example, one individual. So you may administer on 100, 150 or something. We'll talk about what should be the exact number. So administer the entire instrument to a sample of respondents and then find the correlation between the scores of both the halves. So higher the correlation and higher the split half reliability. Any doubts still here? Okay. The next and the last one in the reliability is internal consistency reliability. We had seen in FML. Yes, please. Yes.
Ma'am, can you repeat the split half reliability?
Okay, I'll repeat it. Yes, Indira. Thank you for being
Okay.
with us.
Thank you, ma'am.
I like if somebody asks question. Even if it is a mere simple question, just read what is there on the slide. It shows that you're connected. Okay, split half reliability is a measure of consistency between two halves of a construct measure. So if we have a test on, say, spirituality, and it has, say, 200 items, then two halves will be, first half will have 100 items, another half will have another 100 items. So how do we go for the halves? So either we can just say odd even. You see in this example, so for 100, 50 and 50 odd even, or through random number generator, you can select first 50, put it in the first half, and rest 50 in the second half. So you have to split the test items in two halves, half one and half two, test items, question items. Then you have to administer the entire instrument to sample of respondents, to the same set of individuals, individual 1, 2, 3, 4, and n number of individuals, the same test, half one and half two are administered. Then the scores that you have obtained on half one and half two for individual 1, individual 2, 3, and so on, find out the correlation between these two scores. Higher the correlation, higher would be the split half reliability. Is it fine, Indira?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for asking question.
But there is
Yes,
any
Aditi.
like on the basis of what we are going to divide it into halves?
It has to be random.
Okay.
We want to say that all the items assess the same construct. Anxiety means all the items should assess the anxiety. So either it can be through random number generator or just say odd and even. That is also fine. So there, you cannot say that these set of items, or there should be no bias in dividing the items.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. Okay, next is internal consistency reliability. That is measurement of consistency between different items of the same construct. That means you have 100 items, then the consistency between assessment of all the items in the construct, all the 50 items of the construct should assess anxiety, some or the other form of the anxiety. So if a multiple item construct measure is administered to respondents, the extent to which respondents rate to those items in a similar manner is a reflection of internal consistency. Okay, so if your item 1 is asking about anxiety, some part of anxiety, item 2 is some part of another part of anxiety. So it should be more or less the same. If it is extreme, then the items, both the items are not assessing anxiety. One is assessing anxiety, other is assessing something else. There can be variation, but cannot be the extremes. So reliability, how can we assess the internal consistency reliability? So it can be in terms of average inter-item correlation. So inter-item correlation, you have to calculate statistics. Through statistics, we can do it. Or average item to total correlation, like particular item to total correlation. That average we can calculate, and this can be calculated through Cronbach's alpha. Just to give you a glimpse of what is Cronbach's alpha, I don't want you to master it for now, but this is what is, and Cronbach's alpha was given by Lee Cronbach in 1951. So we find out the number of items that are there in the measure, and we call it K. We find out the variance of the observed total score, and we call it sigma, we call it sigma X. And then we find out the observed variance for each item, and then we call it sigma Y. So this is how we can calculate Cronbach's alpha. So these are just the formula. Maybe you can ignore this because now we have a lot of softwares wherein you just put the values, required values, and the Cronbach's alpha is calculated. So you don't have to bother much about the calculation. But yes, Cronbach's alpha is the measure, is the statistic which is used to assess the internal consistency reliability. And what is internal consistency reliability? We have discussed. Okay, and a lot of statistics. We are talking about tools in quantitative research, so a lot of numbers would come up. Don't worry. Now, what should be sample size for examining reliability? When I say that I have to calculate split half reliability, internal consistency, then on how many participants I should administer the test? Any answer, please? Okay,
Minimum 30.
Astha, yes, please.
Minimum 30.
Okay, 30. How do you decide that, Astha? Who says that?
Ma'am, actually, I have read in the books and all that the sample should be minimum 30.
Which book?
Ma'am, I don't know the particular name of the book, don't
Okay,
remember it, but
no problem.
yeah,
Astha,
in
good
the
you
research book.
No problem. It's good you answered, but I'll tell you what. Next time, whenever you read, you try to remember the name of the author and the title of the book. Okay, so that ensures the reliability of the book. Actually, if the author is, renowned author. Okay, so how do we? No problem. But it's good. At least you responded. What should be sample size of the for examining the reliability? So now, what I would do is, I would refer the journal that I'm targeting to publish and the standard journals, as I said, Routledge, Taylor and Francis, Sage, Springer Nature, and so on, Science Direct, and so on. These are all standard journals, okay? Reputed journals. So I would refer the articles. What do the articles say? Now, more the number of items your tool has, the larger the sample would be. See, for example, CQI has consciousness quotient inventory has 237 items. So it was administered on 2,266 participants to find out the reliability and validity. That large is the sample. FMI has 15 items. It was administered on 115 participants. So it varies. But go through the journal that you are targeting. Has to be more than 100 for sure. Okay?
Isn't it like 10% of the total population? Like, I don't know if that is
that
like,
will be for the generalizability of the result of the research question that you are asking. We are talking about the construction of the tool to assess the reliability of the tool.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is the reference that I've given you, Frontiers. Okay, now let's come back to the summarize and say how do we construct a research tool? How do we begin with it? So first of all, decide the age group which you are targeting. Are you going to work on preschoolers? Your tool is going to be valid for preschoolers, for primary school, high school, or say class 1 to class 12. What is your target? So target group you have to decide. That's very important. Language, English, Hindi, which language? Focus on one language. So one language at a time when you construct a tool. I'll tell you if you want to do it in multiple languages, what you have to do. So one language at a time to begin with. Define the construct operationally. Should be very clear with the variable that you're talking about. Each dimension of the variable, all dimensions of the construct should be clear to you. I have seen researchers using spirituality term very confidently. Ask them what is spirituality, they give very vague responses. Don't do that. Prepare the pool of the items, test items that would assess the dimensions of the construct that you have identified. Then select the response mode. They will answer in yes or no, MCQs or rating scale, or how do you want, or is it a performance task? How do you want the answer? So select the response mode. There is spelling mistake if people are still awake. Okay, so it's in the response mode. Okay. So next is selection of words according to respondents' understanding. This is very important because this is a major source of unreliability of the tool. We had discussed. Avoid the echo questions or leading questions that suggest the answer, what is expected by the researcher. For example, we say, you don't approve of strikes. Do you? That means you want that respondent to say no, right? So don't ask echo questions that gives the answers. Then develop the pattern of coding, recording, and scoring. How would you record the response, take the responses? How would you code? What does 5 mean? Is the highest or the lowest? How would you score? Develop that pattern and then establish the validity and the reliability. Begin with the face validity, which is very easier. Just look at the face, whether this is on face, does it look like an anxiety tool or not? You can take the decision. And then go for the other reliability and validity types. Okay, so this is how you construct the tool. Begin with the individual tryout. Give to the one individual. And it'll be good if you can record when he's responding, even if it is a questionnaire. The frowns speak a lot when he's responding to the question. Maybe he had problem with that statement. He's not able to interpret the statement. This can lead to bias. This can lead to incorrect response. So record with the consent for sure of the participant, individual tryout, then small group tryout, then give it to the 5 to 6 students or 10 students or participants, certain RA students, participants, or target group, and then again record with the consent. Recording would help you. You may not be able to, later make out what the respondent had problem with, or maybe the respondent has forgotten and is not able to report the problem. But if you record, then you can at least make the identify the possible problems through non-verbal communications. That is very important. Non-verbal cues, that is very important. Then you can ask the respondent, take the feedback from the respondent. Where did he face the problems and things like that? Whether he was able to interpret the question or not. So, and then the field tryout. Yes, that's called the pilot study. You go to the real fields if you want to administer the school, you want to administer in corporate world, you want to administer on a set of employees who are working in university. So that's called field tryout. Do that. Now, there is another point that a measure can be reliable, but not valid. So all of our wristwatches are right now saying that it is 6:05, but the time may not be valid because we have set the time like that. कि हम सब 10 minute आगे चलेंगे, so the 10 minute late चलेंगे, so 6:05. So all our wristwatches are showing reliable time, but it is not a valid time. 6:05 is not a valid time because right now the time is maybe 6:10. So a measure which is reliable, it is not necessary that it may be valid. Okay. Likewise, a measure can be valid but not reliable. So the time is right, but all of us have set our watches to something else. So the time is valid, but it is not consistent to all the respondents because we have changed the time or things like that. So a measure can be valid, but it may not necessarily be reliable. So we have to ensure that it is valid and reliable both when we are talking about the standardization. Now, the next question and the last question, I will ask you a lot of questions because you don't ask questions. So that is why I'm preparing a lot of questions for you. So tell me, can I translate a standardized tool and use it for research? So there is this tool available for spirituality. But I'm not the master of the spirituality. I've read the construct and all, and I can conduct the research, but I don't have time. Neither can I prepare it, nor do I have the mastery to prepare. But there is already a standardized tool available. So I'm using that tool. But that tool is in French language. I want to use it for the population who is speaking Hindi. So can I translate a standardized tool and use it for research? Any answers, please? Let's see who has not participated in class at all. So yes. Akhilesh, would you like to answer? Alinda, there are very nice names. Aman, would you like to answer? Pooja, Isha, Durgesh, all of you are there or not? Jyotsna, Jyotika, would you like to answer? Megha, Nilima, Pradeep, at least your name was taken. Sachi, would you like to answer? Sonam, Tayyab, who's there?
Actually, here, whatever the presentation is prepared, it is totally concentrated to psychological department. Those who are belonging to science particularly. So in that case, the standardized tool may be suppose I want to measure the conductivity or ion mobility. So for that, I have to take electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. So, yes. Whereas in your case,
you don't require translation, right? For that, you don't require translation. Translation is required when there are words. So I am just asking if your tool has words. And a standardized tool is available in some language. Even if you're from chemistry background, then as Sujata ma'am told you at the onset, that interdisciplinary researches are of great importance and are in demand right now. So you cannot just remain in your own department. You have to come out of your department also. So if you are collaborating with somebody from social sciences, then you need to know what that person is doing. So you should be aware. Okay, yes. So can I translate a standardized tool?
Yes, ma'am. I think it can be translated.
Okay. So how would you go for it? You take the tool, suppose very simple, it is in English, you take it and translate it into Hindi, and that's it?
No, with proper referencing.
Okay, you refer it. Then that's it?
There should be some editing, ma'am.
Okay, you have edited it, you have made the corrections. Then?
I have a question.
Yes, Ujala.
Can you please clarify what is exactly a standardized tool?
Standardized tool, I told you at the beginning, a tool which has good reliability, good validity, is published In a good journal, reputed journal, by reputed journal, I mean Scopus Index journals, journals with good publishers like Taylor and Francis, Routledge, Science Direct, Nature, Springer Nature, Sage, and so on. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and that tool is used by the standardized authors again. Okay, now, so can I translate it?
I have to cross check with the respondent. It might be possible the person who there is a standardized tool,
No, the
but
person
it might
cannot
not
respond it in English and he wants it in Hindi and your tool is available in English. You don't want to construct the tool. You just want to use it. Most of us do that, right? So English, you just translate into Hindi. Is it okay? No, it is not okay. Let's not waste time. I tell you what, it is not okay. It is not sufficient to just translate and then use it. This is not how you have to go for. Most of the researchers do this mistake. See what we have to do. This is one example. Validation of the Spanish version of the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire. FFMQ was available in English. And this researcher had to translate into Spanish because his participants knew Spanish. They didn't know English. Okay. So what he did, he administered the translated version on a sample of 632 students and found the internal consistency values. These were the values. And then you can say, you have to publish the validation of that tool. See, like this is published. Below is the reference at the end of this frame. This is what you have to do. You just cannot translate. You have to again find out the reliability and validity. We call it adaptation of the tool. Okay. So what is required is one translation team translates the scale into the target language. And then the second team translates it back into the original language. So both of them should know both the languages. So one team would translate it from English to Hindi, another team would translate it back from Hindi to English. And the translations should match, number one. The fidelity of the translation is judged by how closely it matches with the original version, the translation. You translate it from English to Hindi, then there is another team who translated from Hindi to English. Then this English should match with the original English. How closely it matches, that ensures that it is valid. So what is important is translators should know both the languages, number one, and should be familiar with both the cultures because they would know which words are acceptable in that culture and which are not. That's it. Thank you. Lot of talking. Yes, now you have questions, please.
Ma'am, what are steps in standardization process?
What? Please repeat your question, Ujala.
What are the steps in standardization process?
So while standardizing, first of all, I said what you have to do is construct a tool and then find out after construction, find out the reliability and validity.
Oh, that comes in the standardization process only.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So validity and reliability itself is a long process. Establishing the validity and reliability, long process. Going to the experts, seeking their opinion, reducing the duplicate items or the similar looking items based on the expert's opinion, checking the language, all that needs to be done for the validity of the tool, and then establishing the criterion validity, construct validity.
Can you please show the previous slide?
Which one?
Yeah, previous one. This one.
This one.
Yes. I didn't get the item pool. What it means?
Okay, so I want to assess consciousness. I'll have to prepare the items. I have defined the construct that what is